button does like an erase, but you see it's kind of like a smudgy eraser. And then the middle button will erase the screen. So the keyboard, the way that works is if you hit a key, it just prints the right button does like an erase. Cursor, kind of like if you hold a key down and I keep moving, you can see it's repeating. So here's like left, right, up, down, page up, page down, home, end, insert, delete. And then we have tab, there's tab 9. Carriage return is 13, escape is 27. So it does everything on the keyboard. So you can see that all you got to do is when you go through this thing, if key is non-zero, that means you have a new key. And I put this up on the thread for the latest P2 file. There's a zip, and I also updated the, what is it called? The GitHub thing, the repository, so that you can build Peanut. So all the file changes are in there now. Now, any simple questions I can ask now, but if, for more detailed discussion, we can wait until after John's presentation. Any quick questions? I guess not.
Are you using this hardware to connect the mouse?
No, it's the key, it's the mouse on my PC.
Oh, got it.
So it's feeding back. It's not a USB on the P2. It's actually the mouse on the host system.
Ah.
So just to reiterate, I've mentioned this in the last live forum last week. This is a wonderful human-machine interface screen when you've got the computer hooked up and you're programming your propeller tool. So JonnyMac's taken the time to show us how these next-gen screens work when you want an embedded system where you can't afford to have a full PC sitting next to your Propeller 2 chip. But this is just an amazing prototyping tool that really kind of sets the Propeller 2 apart. So this is awesome, Chip. Thank you for getting this done. This is really cool.
Yeah, I think, and we covered everything the mouse does and everything the keyboard practically does, shy of the function keys, which are more for like host system use, and then all the Shift, Alt, Control combinations, which we don't probably care about for these kinds of purposes. But it did take a little extra stuff to get the arrows in. I think the arrows are pretty important, right?
Right. And remember, over the summer, everyone, Chip got the sprites to work, and sprites are basically little bitmaps that could be moved anywhere. So you can basically add little images and have this keyboard stuff. So it's really kind of an amazing tool for making the human-machine interface. So this is going to allow a lot of sort of bling to a lot of projects, particularly during the prototyping phase. So this is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for your interest in this.
Okay, Gavin, if you could manage Chip's time for the next week, what do you want him to do next?
I think this is it. I think towards the end of the last meeting, we were discussing that there's, Chip did some amazing things for the Propeller 1. After he's gone through all the trouble to make this chip, just doing some really cool demos and writing some basic code that gets people doing some amazing things right off the bat as sort of a base library for this. So I think that's, I'm waiting for when Chip just is able to write hundreds of lines of elegant assembly for this beautiful chip to be able to come up with just mind-blowing applications for it that let you do things with this level of a microcontroller chip that just isn't it's unheard of. So things like the Gortzel and stuff, but even I'm sure there's lots of other things I'll have to think about it. But this is all, I think getting into some really cool software would be neat.
Gavin, you were supposed to ask him for a file system driver for the flash chip.
No.
File system, yeah, that would be good. And
Well,
and of course, the single step debugger would be really awesome.
well, yeah, the next thing that I got to deal with is the single step debugger. I mean, I've got the interactivity working now. I just have to write the code to make it play over the PC.
Okay, so could somebody paste a link of the Peanut location into the forum chat?
Yeah, I can
okay.
do that if no one else has it.
And we can get Jeff to incorporate this in the Propeller tool before that presentation coming up.
Yes.
In February or so. All right, so we'll be quiet with presentations until January 12th, but we can always have a meeting on the previous week to January 12th if we want to. So someone just needs to say they're interested in that and we can put up an informal Zoom link. On the 19th, Chip will go over the motor controller with us. And by the way, everything I'm showing you is on parallax.com/events. There are at least a dozen there, so go sign up for everything you're interested in. And JonnyMac, turn this over to you. And while you get started, I'm going to paste a link to the bank of JonnyMac so we can free JonnyMac and keep him busy for productive purposes for all of us.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, hello, everybody, and glad we have a group of people back because I know this has been a bit of a project, but we're wrapping up today and there's no PowerPoint. We're just talking code because we're going to integrate everything together. The goal of today is to interact with the real-time clock that we talked about in week 1 and we talked about last year. So we reviewed it in week 1. Well, now we're going to have a two-way interaction on that. Because if you think about it, where the code that we left off last week, we had kind of half duplex interaction. The display could tell the propeller what to do. And we didn't really have a lot of interaction with the propeller telling the display what to do. Well, in this case, it's going to be different. So there's a lot more two-way traffic. So let me just show you what the project looks like. I guess I should share my screen first. And everybody see my screen? You should see my next-gen editor. Somebody let me know.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. All right, so this is the new first page of the project. So this is going to be where we display a clock. We have 4 buttons, only 2 of which are occupied at the moment. There is this little gear icon is where we can set the clock. And then this is our little lighting controller icon. And if we look at the lights page, this looks identical to what you saw last week. Although now that this is part of a multi-page project, I had to add an exit button here. And then we have a fairly generic keypad entry. So this will let us enter a decimal keypad and you can put a hint in there to tell people how it works up and it'll take up to 10 digits because the next gen, like the propeller, uses 32-bit integers. The use of this, I tried to make it match standard things. So if you press the clear button, it will erase the last digit. If you press enter, it will accept the value and send it back. And then this little back button does what you think, it just escapes out without making any changes. So in it's called Pixel Control version 3. In that file are all the PNGs that are used in the project, but I also included my SVGs so that you can edit them. And at least one of you are doing that because as he well knows, Kevin R. and I have had a couple of conversations this week. In fact, he just sent me some fresh code about an hour ago where he added here on the original light screen. Now I added this indicator that shows that this is a smaller value at the top. Kevin had the blank version of this and he added some more features in there. So Kevin has taken the code and added features to it. So his lighting system does more than mine does. But anyway, all of those files are available. So the original source files and so that you can modify them as Kevin has. So a couple of things, I said in the first week, the next-gen people were very kind of persnickety saying, look, you really need to plan this out. And I found out the hard way why. You can move some things around within a project and NextGen will adjust values for you, but not in your code window. And I ran into a problem where I was moving to a screen and suddenly it got trashed and I did not understand why until I decided, okay, it's not that big a project, I'll start from scratch. That's why it's version 3. Version 2 I was having trouble with. Well, I started copying over bits of code from version 1 and I had the same problem. But since I did that one piece at a time, I was able to see where the break took place. And it happens to be, I really like the use of the feature, the crop, so this object is a crop device. So you can show from that part of any screen that matches the same size, in that box. So that's how I turned the lights on and off. Buttons also have, and these features. So for example, all of the sliders, there's 4 of them on this page, they all use the crop image effect so that I can have this nicer looking background and use these custom fader knobs. When you use the crop image, you're telling it which image to go from. And so that's embedded in the code. Well, if you rearrange the order of your screens, your code doesn't know that. So this was a hard lesson learned. I finally figured out, oh, darn it, there's the problem right there. If you want, the best idea then is to follow their guidance. Put all your screens together first, so you have all the screen order you want. Now, I've made the decision to put my main screens all at the top and any accessory pieces like these sliders at the bottom, especially with these on and off kind of things. You know, there's two screens. So there's a, you can see here, there's a main home screen with the off version. So the buttons are not pressed and there's nothing in the display. And then I have the on version of that display that allows me to switch things on and off, and it shows all the buttons pressed. So I want to look at that in Inkscape so I can show you. So this is that project. So this is the Inkscape file, and it's a layered project, so it makes it easy to deal with. So this is the off version. When I want to do the on, I can select that version, which sets the buttons. It changes it gets rid of the 3D effect, it lightens them up, and it drops the little icon a little bit. So it looks animated. And then I can turn on the displays. That's what I want to talk about. So these are the elements that are animatable, I think that's the best way to put it, in the main display. We're going to have a flashing colon. So anytime the clock time, the seconds is odd, the colon will be on. If the seconds is even, it will be off. So we get a flashing colon that says, hey, the clock is alive. We're showing all the days here, but of course, only one of those will be exposed. And then if the time is past 12 in the afternoon up through 11 p.m., it will show this PM indicator. So those are all the possibilities of on. And then what I really like about the way NextGen works is that we only need to have these two screens. We have an off screen and an on screen. Now, you'll remember in the NextGen editor, it's pretty easy. You can go to a screen and you can click this button. You see here, it says replace. So you can move screens in and out really quickly. And I use that a lot. What I want to encourage you is, remember, a lot of this is interactive. You're going to use temporary stuff in and out. So what I did on my screen is I figured out about the size of the font. Another thing that I do want to point out while I'm talking about it, in the font generator, so because remember, you do have to create fonts for that. What I hadn't noticed until this week is this right here where it says custom. So these are the default heights, and I'd been using them, but it says custom. So I have found that now it only takes 2 attempts to get the height the way I want. If I build something in Inkscape, then I make a guess. And this height is not point, so it doesn't match the font size that you have in Inkscape. But I've made a guess. It's about the height is usually about 1.5 or so times what the Inkscape font size is. I make a guess. I take a screenshot, I bring it in, and I adjust it, and I can tweak it. So now I'm down to only 2 tries to get the right size font. And what I mean by that is I build up what I want it to look like. So I've got a layer in that file called display alignment. And you see here, so this is like a segment test screen, shows all the segments that are on. Now the zeros are going to change, of course, because that's where we're going to decide, we're going to put our hours in this section and our minutes in this section. So these are going to be separate objects in the NextGen display. But so you notice I filled them out, and then I pulled this in as my first screen, and then I built everything on top of that. So that's how I was able to set my crop fields, the position properly, and adjust the text so it looks like this when it's operating. So, I'm sure a lot of people do this, but I'm often using a scrap of paper and putting it up against something, marking a line, moving it, marking another line. You know, it's kind of the digital version of that. You know, build your screen the way you want it to look, bring it into the NextGen editor, make, you know, align all your stuff on that. You will see when I run that project, I'm using a cyan color for the text, and you saw it. In fact, you already saw it here. So I'm using this color. So that way, when I bring in those text fields and I populate them with zeros, I'm able to get them really perfectly aligned. And once that's done, then I can go back to, you know, this version, buttons off. This is the zero screen. I take the PNG from this and put it back in. So there's a little bit of, you know, iteration there. Don't be afraid of that. There's never a direct linear path to anything in life, frankly. So just be mindful of that. Now, again, I know Kevin is experimenting because he sent me his SVGs too. And so I can see he was able to take the elements and copy them and adjust them. So that's why I provided the SVGs. So you don't have to recreate what I've done, but I will encourage you to get artistic and create your own. I mean, I know I've talked with a few people and there are folks excited about this display. It's nice. It's not terribly expensive and, you know, adds a lot of versatility. As Gavin was saying, when you want a standalone project, it's a nice little HMI. It works really nicely with the propeller. And so I'm excited to see what other people did. Now I hope I don't get in trouble, but Ken, didn't you say something about a possible contest for?
I did. The rules have not been made, but we can announce it at the end of the forums or at the end of the meeting today. Yeah. Good.
Because it would be fun. I mean, I like I said, so I'm warning everyone else. Kevin Art already has he's been going at it. So he's written new code. He's updated the display. Now, I'm not suggesting we have a contest for this. It'd be nice if it was something original.
Well, should we include him in the contest? Maybe he should be excluded because we're all getting.
Or he could be a judge, you know, because he's good with this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's fun. At any rate, so let me talk then now about the code that's on the NextGen side, and then I'll run it through the editor so you can see it. So if I go so on the home screen, in fact, if I do a selection, you'll be able to see these are the crop sections for the day. Here's the crop section for the colon. There's the PM indicator, and then our hours and minutes. So these are all the objects that we have on there. And well, I'll go ahead and run it first. So let's just see it running. Now, this is going to be obviously a little different than when we have it hooked up to the propeller because I don't have a real-time clock hooked up yet. So initially the display will be blank when we do a debug. So here is the display. Now, when it's hooked up to a propeller that has a real-time clock, the display will come right up. If we want to set the time, we're going to click here, and that takes us to the third screen. Now, you notice we have a hint in here. And since this is a very generic keypad, you know, thinking about it, I had to make a decision. How am I going to enter time in here? So I decided just to do it as a decimal number. So the first two digits are the hours in 0 to 24 hour format. So 0 to 23 rather. The minutes, then the seconds, and then a day. 1 is Sunday, 7 is Saturday. And so you can enter that value. If you press enter, it will go back. So if I wanted to put in the time, it's 12:34 and 56 seconds. And now in this case, I'm using the parallax font because that's what I use on the button. So I thought that looked nice. Again, clear does like clear on a keypad. I don't have a clear all on here. And I'm going to make the seconds digit odd so that the colon turns on. And then today is day 4 because it's Wednesday. And when I press enter and we go back, and it will set the time. Now you'll notice too that there's a serial message in here. And so we have a couple of new messages. One is page. So the propeller now for this version of the project, let me say it that way, wants to know what page the display is on, because there's no need to send time updates to the display if we're not on this page. So we filter for the page. And then you'll also notice there's a thing that says clock equals, and then there's that value. So we send that down to the propeller, and it will pull apart those values and stick it into the real-time clock. And then it will run live from there. This button, same as before, gets us over to the to this page. Now, before we only had one page, and without some changes that I'll show you, it would have, if I left by going to exit and then came back, it would have zeroed everything out. So I'm going to show you, if you want to keep values on a page, kind of like, I was asking Chip a week or so ago about, hey, I wish we could have static variables. If you want them to be static on a page, there's a setting. I'll show you how to use that. So it's not a really big update, but it's a fun update because now we have the ability to have a live time display. We can go to our features. So I'm hoping this will encourage people to take this foundation and then build lots of controls out of it. Any questions so far? Okay. So remember, on the propeller, this will be live. The colon will be animated, and the time will change as it does in real time. So on this project, I took a little more liberal use of global variables. So you can see on this programs tab, I've got, these are all temporary variables, but these are things that are used for communication. In particular, the max keys is how many keys will allow for a keyboard entry. So for the time, we only want up to 7 digits. Now you really should do 7 full digits. Result is going to be the value that comes back from the keypad, whatever we entered. It will be converted from a string in the keypad to a integer and put here. But there are times when we want to escape out. And so the return code tells the caller what to do. If return code is 0, it means nothing happened. We escaped. Don't worry about it. If it's 1, then it means the value in result is now ready to be used. So do something with it. All right. And being global, these are all global and they're simple integers. So they're just easier to deal with than the local variables. So when we do to process the keyboard entry, well, we need to do that when we go into the page. So if I'm on the page, this is the entry code into the page. You'll see there's a bit of code here that says, hey, if the return code is 1, which means there's a value and result to deal with, then we're going to grab that. We're going to make a copy of that. And then we're going to call the code in this hotspot. And then we're going to clear that return code so we don't repeat ourselves. And we'll also tell the propeller that we're on page 0, which means that, because remember, leaving the other page, we set the time in the propeller. Now we're telling the propeller, hey, we're on page 0, so you can start sending me time updates again from the real-time clock that we just had you update on the propeller side. So the code for I wish that these screens were a little bit easier to reset. I turn this off. So here's the reset. This is the code that takes that decimal value and resets and sets the clock. It checks it first. So if there's any value out of whack, it will not do it other than the day. If the hours, minutes, and seconds are all valid values, it will set the clock. If the day is invalid, it will just set the day to Sunday. But these things that you can see, I can zoom in, are simple divisions and modulus. Remember, in this scripting language, which is C-like, they use a percent size for modulus. This just allows us to extract those sections out of raw time, which is our copy of the result. And I've got 4 variables there just to make things clean and tidy. So here's this looks really simplistic because this is a very simplistic scripting language. So if the hours are valid, the minutes are valid, and the seconds are valid, then we're going to set the clock. So the first thing we'll do is, this is the crop for the AM, the PM indicator. So if we can divide, if the time is greater than or equal to 12, it's PM. So we will show it. That's what this does. Otherwise, we will hide it, which is what that does. Because we're using a 24-hour format, and that's what's coming also from the propeller, we have to fix that since we want AM, PM on the screen. And so it's a simple matter of, if it's greater than 12, then we subtract 12 from the hours. If the hours are 0, then we set it to 12. Very simple stuff for that we can, anytime we do an real-time clock project, we do that. These COVX, remember, that's convert. They convert those values to text. Now you may be wondering why I use text fields instead of number fields, because that would allow me to turn off the colon and put other characters in there that might be in that font. So it was a choice I made. I may never use, but I gave myself that flexibility. If instead of using text in the hours and the minutes, we use number fields, then those conversions would not be necessary. Although with the minutes, you always need the leading 0. So it would be better actually to use an X float field instead of a standard number field, because with the X float, you can turn off the decimal point and you can force the leading zeros. And this sys2 is the seconds. And so what this will do is it takes the modulus of the seconds, which is going to be 0 or 1. So that's used to control the flashing colon. So again, when the seconds are odd, the colon is on. When the seconds are even, the colon is off. So you get that flashing thing. I'm a very big mimic. As an actor, I sometimes have to mimic accents or dialects or those kind of things. And when I'm building things, I will often go, like my kitchen is that way. I'll often go look at devices and say, well, how are they behaving? So of course we could have put the seconds in the display. We certainly have room for it. But I thought, mimicking the behavior of a lot of devices would be an interesting exercise. And it provides some room in the display for future features. So for example, the real-time clock module that we're using here has a temperature. So we could easily put the temperature in the display. There is a module that Ken used, and we talked about once, called a DHT22. That's a temperature and humidity sensor. So you could add that to the project, and have temperature and humidity, and have a nice kind of display. So choices, but I tend to look to see what commercial people are doing and copy those things. This section here, this for loop, this iterates through. Now remember, this is a case where we want to have the object IDs to be in a contiguous order. So on this display, the Sunday crop field is ID 1. The Saturday crop field is ID 7. So remember, the NextGen has this internal array called B, which are the objects on the screen. So what I'm doing is I'm doing this for loop 1 to 7 in X. And if X equals sys3, which is the Sunday value, or sorry, sys3, which is the daytime value, then it will turn on the day, otherwise it will turn it off. So it zips quickly through and sets whatever day of the week we're on. So when you're looking at the screen, remember from the graphic I showed you in my Inkscape file, we had 7 days, but only one will ever actually be on when we're doing the thing. And there we are. So that's, oh, sorry, here's where we're sending the time, forgive me. And we will do the normal kind of thing. This is the same kind of thing we've done before, where we're saying some function or something equals and then the value. So this is converting the X, which is, oh, what I'm doing here is I'm taking the raw time, which is our original reading from the keyboard, and dividing it by 10, which is snipping off the day. And then I'm adding it back in. As you remember, the checks will allow a bad day to be corrected to Sunday. So this is just, it's not bothering to say, did I have a correct time? I don't want to look at that one digit. It just, I'm arbitrarily snipping off the last day and then using whatever ended up in there. This is converting that number to a string, and this is sending it out. And remember, all of our commands to the propeller from the next gen end with hex 0D, which is a carriage return, so that we can watch them on a standard terminal. You'll notice in the, I sent 2 archives this week. One is the updated control project. The other is an updated version of the terminal and command thing where you can, play with it, because part of that is that interpreter has has a method that will convert the string, this portion of the string clock. It will convert that to an index of your choosing. So there's a list of the new commands that are and the old commands that are all in there, so that we know how to deal with that. I'll show you in the program. I also added constants, named constants for those, which makes it a little nicer to read. So that's the update on this. This is the only area that has anything going on. Now, there's only 4 buttons on this screen, and in fact, right now, only 2 are being used. So I didn't bother to use the touch cap here. I'm just doing the standard here. So I just clicked on the button to go to the clock entry. And here is an interesting thing I want to show you. You can change values on other screens if you allow them to on that screen. And the best way I found out, here's that second array that's inside the next gen. So the B array, I don't know why they use B, but the B array is for the components. P is, the P array is the pages. So I want to go to page 2, and the object is hint. It's a text file, and so I'm doing text. And here I'm entering that hint that you saw when we went to that screen where it says enter the time day. And then I'm setting the maximum number of keys, because you could change that on the fly. And then I jump to that page. Any questions? It's pretty straightforward, I think. Yeah, we hadn't changed pages last week. Sorry. So this is the first time we've done that. So it's just a matter of going to your page. You can also put a name in there. You'll see in my up here, I named my pages home, lights, and keypad. So this one, easy peasy, we're just changing to the lights page. Now, whenever we go to a page, you saw before, like when we land on this page, we told the propeller what page we're on. You'll notice when we go to the keypad page, we do the same thing right away. And then we clear this entry field so that there's nothing in that. Now, this is a little bit different than a normal calculator behavior, because it doesn't keep a 0 in there. It just clears it out. So there is a slight difference there. I thought about trying to make it even, but it was more effort than I thought it was worth. So it'll be clear until you start pressing keys.
A quick operational question for you.
Yes.
When you're interacting with the display, have you noticed that if you touch down on a button and drag away from it, does that allow you to not receive a touch-up event?
I don't know, but I'll try it because I've got a live one right here. No, it doesn't. No. Well, and let me take that back, Stephen. I'm going to say I don't know based on this test, because there are at least there's 2 events for buttons. There is press and release.
Touch it, right?
What I don't know is if I had put that on the release event, it may allow that. So
yeah, that's why I'm thinking, because that's traditional for us to do.
Yes. Yeah.
The release event.
Yeah,
Okay.
I put it into the press event only because it just, all the pages, default when you have a button, they default to the press event. Now, this is a case on this page where you'll notice we have 12 buttons on this page and this escape thing. There's no code in any of them because this uses that touch cap feature. So here it is here that we saw last week. So just as a reminder, this touch cap object will grab the ID of the last thing you pressed or released. And then touch cap has its own press and release events. Now, what you can do within that is you can look at the ID and do different things for press and release based on your goal. So I'm doing touch here. So here I'm capturing the ID of the device of whatever we pressed. So if it's ID 1 through 10, those are the keys. Now, you always have an ID of 1. There's no ID 0 on the things. So I know that 1 to 10 are the keys. This is another one of those cases. Since this is a contiguous thing, we want to keep the IDs contiguous. If you get them cattywampus, you can use, it takes a little bit of practice, but you can use these keys. This will send the ID to the top or the bottom of the stack, and you can rearrange the order. Usually what I end up doing is saying, okay, what's the last thing I want from the top? And I click on that, which sends it to the top, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. So it kind of pushes it down and it gets things in the correct order. So in this case, this is where, again, going back to the next gen, their admonishment is think about everything before you get started. So I planned out the order that I put buttons on the screen. And so I didn't have to make any adjustments. So in this case, 1 to 10, if the ID is 1 to 10, then it's a number button. So this string len will tell me how many characters I've got entered here. And if it's less than the max keys value, which is that global value I set before jumping over to this page, then this x minus equals 1 will just correct it to match the key. This will convert it into a character, and this will add it into the string, which is displayed here. So I'm using this entry field as my holding string. So I'm holding it and displaying it. Now, for you programmers, I'm sure you thought, like I did, oh, to convert it, you could just add, hex 32. That doesn't work because that's an integer type and this is a string type. So there's no shortcuts. You have to use this conversion formula to convert X into a 1-character string. This is the length of that string. This 0 indicates decimal value. So that adds it in. If it's, if we go through the other ones, if it's 11, that's the clear button. So this is a really interesting thing. Even though this is a text field, if you do entry.text minus equals 1, it will erase the last character. And I got that from one of their demos. It's a peculiar thing. It makes sense in one side, and then on the other you think, but that's looking like it's applying a math operator to a string, but it is actually shortening the string. It'll remove the last character of the string. 12 is enter. So in this case, we're going to convert the value to result. Now, in this case, 0, I'm using 0 because it will convert as many digits as it has to. We've preset how many are there, but technically, if it was midnight, it was 5 minutes after midnight and no seconds on Sunday, you could put 05001. That's only 5 digits. And when you displayed it, it would show 1205 and on Sunday. So I can't force 7 digits. Well, I guess I could, but I think it's pointless. At any rate, this is, remember, the length of the string. 0 means use as many digits or characters as you have to. The return code is set to 1, which is going to tell the other page, hey, we have a value to use, and then we jump back. And the escape is pretty easy. We just make sure the return code is clear and then we jump back, nothing to it. So that's our keypad entry screen. Now I made this, as you can see, where it could be used anywhere. And the way that you could do that, I'll show you very quickly. I didn't do that in this, but here's my keypad page. If I right click on keypad, you notice how it says export. If I click on that, I could say keypad. Oh, it looks like I did do that once before and tried it. So I'll do it here. And I'll say keypad. And now it has saved it as a page that we can import into another project. So we can come here and we can say import page and we can grab that. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to break anything, but it will bring in the page and it will have your artwork and everything. Now, caveat, because I did learn this the hard way, it will not import any of these global variables that you define. So you'll have to manually define them in the secondary project that uses the keypad. But anything on that page, these local variables, those will be you'll be able, those will come over. So your artwork, your code, all of that jazz. So it makes it easy to create something generic like this and then stick it into other projects. Again, you'll have to manually put these. Any questions on the keypad page? Pretty straightforward. All right. So lastly, we'll go to the updates on the lights page. This is our lighting controller. We saw that last week. Again, you notice I just added another button on here. I updated my graphics so we know that this is slower and that's faster. Now, if you look into my variables, you'll see some are black and some are yellow. A yellow is a local variable. So over in your attributes section, you'll notice here, I'll click on this select thing. You notice how it says VA scope local. If I click on my program though, it says VA scope, it says global. So I think that should actually have just said static because that's what it does. What will happen is if you want to keep your values, your page values the same, then set them to global scope. So you'll notice all of my sliders are indicated in black as well as my indicators here. So when I go off this screen and come back, everything stays as it is. All right. So this is fairly straightforward. I've just added this button and then I've made a change to some of these variables as far as their scope, but I didn't make any other changes on this page. It was already doing what we needed to do. When we click on an item, it takes care of doing what it has to do. In this case, updating the color. Oh, I did make a behavioral thing too, because I kept getting tired of saying, oh, John, stop that. On my twinkle feature was always using color 2, but I tended to start thinking of color 1 as foreground and color 2 as background. And so now twinkle uses color 1 instead of color 2. So it works more like the other things, but otherwise that's it. Any questions? Because other than that, then we'll jump into the propeller side. No? Pardon me, I'm trying not to cough today.
John, can I ask a question about the lights
Yes, sir.
that y'all were using last week? I noticed that in your demo last week, you were changing the color of all of the individual lights. Is it possible to change each individual light color independent of the others?
Well, those lights certainly support that. They're all individually addressable. And, so when you run some of the, like the flash will jump between the two. So probably the chase best indicates that because you can see this animated thing. So the short version is yes. with this project, if you wanted to change individual colors, you'd probably want to make a new interface, which would be a fun thing where you could say, maybe get rid of all of this stuff and just have a channel indicator where you could bump the channel and then you could set the color, bump the channel and set the color, and then maybe have something that saves that off if you wanted to do that.
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, I had to do that actually once in Spin using the terminal. There was a project that we did. I'm sure I've shown pictures. It was there's a guitar player for the band Limp Bizkit was wearing this helmet and this gauntlet down one arm that had a bunch of these LEDs on it. And the shop, they made the LEDs, and I was not smart in the direction that I gave them. I said, just put them on there. I can fix the order in code. It turned into a giant nightmare. And I spent an entire evening going through with a piece of paper so I could map out the actual channel versus the virtual channel I wanted it to be. Because in the end, they wanted this sweeping stripes to go from one side of his head down his arm. And yet, so the LEDs in many cases were perpendicular to the direction they wanted the stripes. So I ended up creating virtual stripes using DAT segments and animated. It all worked out, but it was a long night on my feet in Steve Wang's shop. It was probably 24 straight hours of coding because there was a concert, that week that we had to get this to. But, it's doable. So this would be a fun thing. So I will challenge you, Carol, maybe in the forums, you see your hey, here's your color set project where you set the channel and set the color.
That's what I'm working on.
All right. That'll be cool. Okay. All right. So if there's no more questions on the next-gen side, we'll go to the propeller side. So as I said before, I'm going to tease my friend John because I see he's online now. I'm going to just say publicly, my friend John is amazingly patient with me because I'm helping him with a project and I haven't had as much time as he would like me to have this week because of this and some personal issues I've been dealing with. But one of the things he and I talk about, we do things very deliberately and kind of, step by step, and it's always worked for the projects we've done together. So this is one of the updated files. This was from week 1, but what I did, because we added 2 new features to our thing, I put them down here. So these are all the commands, the 6 commands now that the propeller will understand from the updated next-gen. And then in order to make the other code more readable, I have this NC underscore that stands for next-gen command. And so it's unknown, page, clock, state, color 1, color 2, and delay. So to just make things easier to read. And since I have that code in here, if I run this. And so this was the startup. I'm on page 0 now. So if I switch to the keyboard page, you'll see that it's telling me page 2. If I go back, there's page 0. Here is I'm on page 1 with the lighting controls. And if I change colors, you'll see that that's all doing its thing. So I like to do it through this text interface so I know everything is working. Even though I can see all the code in the next-gen side, I want to make sure that I'm receiving it from the propeller side correctly, and I'm sorting everything out. So I will check. So that was color 1. Here's color 2. So I'm seeing changes. Here's the delay. And, and I've made state changes too. So with that 30 seconds, we tested all of the messages and made sure that they are coming through. And now we can update the controller. There are a couple of features that I want to add in that we haven't done yet. So those will end up in the forums, but this is still working. Now, remember, this version of the code is expecting you to have that real-time clock module. that we talked about in week 1, and we did last year when we were doing the first, these first meetings. We had that real-time clock module that's an I2C clock. This expects that to be there. So be careful running this project without that hooked up. A couple of things that I've done, I added a switch here called monitor. So that'll turn off the output to PST. Right now I've got it turned off because that does add time in our main loop. But this is all supporting that. What we're going to be doing in general is processing our messages is when we're all set up and everything's configured. If we're on the main page, which is page 0, and remember the NextGen told the propeller, that's where we are, then what we're going to do is periodically look at the real-time clock. And if the seconds have changed, we're going to update the real-time clock. And we're going to update the NextGen through the serial connection. So there's not a lot added on here. I added a page variable, and I added this RTC sync variable. What I found when I was playing with this, I was just, well, you can see here's our main loop, which looks very much the same as before, although I've now encapsulated this in that with that switch, so I can turn off access to the terminal. And now this is, I didn't have this originally, but you can see here's the main loop we had. This is what we had last week, sans this check RTC. Well, this loop runs really fast. In fact, I didn't have time to do it, but what I'm thinking about doing, honestly, here, I'll just put it in to remind myself, is putting in this. And then I'm going to hook up a logic analyzer and just see how fast this loop is running. Now, it won't be a perfect square wave because different things will require different time, but I just want to get an idea how fast that is running. Now, I saw a little bit of funniness with accessing the RTC, and I think it was just hammering the I2C bus was probably the issue. Because remember, when we do this check RTC, in fact, it's right here. First, we'll make sure that we're on page 0. If we're not, then we ignore it. And ignore this for just a moment. And then we grab a snapshot of the seconds, minutes, hours, and day number from the RTC. Thankfully, they're in that order in the RTC. And for those that are new to Spin 2, this shows how you can have byte and word local variables in a methods, which I quite like. It just makes it a little easier than in the past. In the P1, for example, I would have put something like buffer, and then I would have said, buffer 0 for seconds, buffer, 1 for minutes, but this is much more readable. And then I can still do the same thing with this RTC read method. It wants to know how many registers you're reading, the address of the output, which are going to be bytes, and the first byte in the RTC to grab. So again, if you look in the RTC, let me do F9. If we look in the RTC register set, you can see seconds, minutes, hours, and the day of the week, they're nicely lined up in order. So that works to our advantage here because those are the things we want for the display. So I'm able to use this, grab them all here. Now, this works because they're in the same order. So if I shuffled the order of these values, I would have a problem. So be mindful of that. And so this grabs those. And if the seconds hasn't changed, so if it's the same as the last second, it just escapes, it gets out. Otherwise, what we're going to do is take those values. Now, remember, coming from the RTC, they're in binary coded decimal. So we convert them from BCD to decimal, and then we multiply them to, which is a decimal shift left, if you think of it that way, to create that decimal value that matches what the internal keypad gives us. So at this point, we have a value that looks very, well, it's structured exactly like the result variable that was from the keypad page. Well, now we need to send that to the NextGen and then cause that update to run. So here's how we do that. Now, this only happens when we're on page 0, so we can modify that directly. So here's on that page, there's a local called raw time. So we're saying raw time.val equals, now this is, remember, I'm using formatted output. So this %d says use a decimal value, and that's going to be this. And then you'll recall from week 1, I told you that every transmission to the next gen and from the next gen actually ends with 3 FFs. So you get FF, FF, FF. And so that %3C says, hey, send this character 3 times and it's FF. And so that puts the value into that updates the variable on page 0 of the next gen. And then this is the click event for that hotspot that holds that code. So we're going to say click hotspot, yada, yada. So let me show you something, in testing to demonstrate this. I'm going to go to that page. And I'm going to get rid of I'm glad I had to research that, Carol. I'm using this a lot to turn that stuff off. So if I guess I didn't need to do that because I'm going to debug. So here's my running thing. So here's what we've done. I can say raw time.val equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 4. Now, it's there, but I need to cause that HS set clock event to run, and (1) means the press event. And now when I do that, there's the time that I just set. So what I did is when I made sure that worked, I just copied this over to my propeller thing and cleaned it up, and life was good. So again, I know I often repeat myself, but I think it's worth repeating this time. Development is often very iterative. You do a thing here, you check a thing there, do a thing here, check a thing there. And by doing that in small, discrete chunks, by the time you get to the end, you've got a very big, solid system. Okay, so you can see those are now I've changed it to go into the formatted output statements, but it's the same thing I just did over in the next gen. And then of course we want to mark that second as been dealt with. We don't want to be, repeating this. So we save that. And that's one of the bigger updates to this side of the thing. The messages are being processed and, right here, same as before. Now, if we go to that, slight update here, because we now have the page command. And, all that's doing is setting our internal page variable, which, as you just saw, we won't transmit updates to the display time updates unless we're on page 0 where the display is being shown. If we have the clock command, then this, just like before, this will grab the value that came from the next gen for the new time, and then it will set the RTC. So if we scroll down here to that, you're going to see this looks very similar to the code that was in the next gen. Here we're going, the hours is the raw time value divided by 100,000. Now remember, the real-time clock uses BCD values. So here's where I'm doing the decimal portion, and then this is converting it to BCD. This modulus operation removes the hours from this raw time variable. And we go through, get the minutes, the seconds, and we don't have to do the BCD to decimal thing with the day, because it's between 1 and 7. So it's always going to be the same no matter what. And then you'll notice this write is kind of the antithesis of that read we had. We're going to read 4 registers and we're going to write rather 4 registers to starting at this location. And so the thing of this is our destination register. That's a register number, not an address, but this is the hub address of the value. And you see we've done the same thing here. So pretty straightforward. So we've seen now setting the clock and then from both sides. Questions? I feel like I'm blasting right through this. Okay, that's actually, I think, Oh, the only changes that I made, there's everything else is the same. And now when you run it on your next gen, oh, sorry, I did make one small change I want to show you. Again, I always try to look for little things. I had a reset feature that I built on into the next gen, but you can actually serially reset the next gen module with this. It says rest, which seems odd that they've done that, but that's actually reset. So if you send that serial string, you'll notice that the display will go black for maybe 100 milliseconds, and it'll come back on, and it'll be as if you powered it on and off. Now, the one thing that I'd hoped to get to but didn't, so we'll see this in the form. So remember that real-time clock has an EEPROM on it. So I think the next logical feature for this project using this real-time clock would be to save what the state we're in, which is the program, if you will, and the color definitions and the speed definition. So there's 4 values there to the EEPROM, and I'll add those after Christmas, and then I'll put them up in the forums. But that's the culmination of all the craziness that we went through the last 2 weeks. So I don't think I have anything. Well, I have a lot to say, of course, everybody knows me, but on this project, I think this is what we've done. It's pretty neat. I like it. I sent it to Ken. Did you get it to run, Ken?
No, because I had propeller tool problems, but I've
Oh,
fixed
that's
that.
right. You said that. Okay.
So I'm getting ready to use
Okay.
my prop plug to update the next gen display.
Okay, good. But yeah, I'm like I said, I've been working with my friend John and Rick. I've talked about, we've done projects together. So the next gen is really powerful. There's a lot to it. You've seen every week I've gone back and said, oh, here, I learned this about it. I learned that about it. And still, we're only doing a small portion of its capabilities. But it's quite a nice display, and again, I like the way Gavin put it. If you need a standalone HMI, this is a nice option to have. Certainly not the only thing, but it's a good option to have. And I think with the ability to do the artwork, I'm not a graphic designer, but I'm kind of happy with the graphics that I did with this. I think it looks pleasant and it looks like a product. And so, you have some fun with it.
John, I found that the touch screen aspect is much easier with the stylus or like an eraser or something.
Well, remember, it's a resistive, so it's funny here. It's green, so you can't see it. So this is one of those things that has that rubber tip for capacitive touchscreens. I find if I touch it with the hard end, it actually works better. But you're right, with your finger, it's sometimes a little bit tricky. And I probably created kind of small hot spots on there. But with something like that won't scratch the thing, but it's hard plastic with a round edge. It works really nicely.
Yeah, it's incredibly fast. The way you can drag around these sliders with an eraser.
Yep.
I just hope everyone tries that if they've only been using their fingers.
Yeah. I have this always, right here on my desk. I've been using it, for a couple of touchscreens I've been experimenting with. Wow, just over an hour for me. That's pretty good. That might be a record for the shortest presentation I've done on the P2.
Before we wrap this, I'm wondering if John Huffman has any display graphic art to show us. Not to volunteer him, but I know he's worked on some interfaces.
Yeah, you'll notice he and I have some shared art where we like that aluminum, that brushed aluminum look. If he'll allow, I have some of his screens, so I could show them from this end. They're still there. I saw him online earlier.
He's gone away to make Christmas candy.
Yeah, it's a neat display. I'm now I often find myself thinking, oh, okay, I have some other projects that I was thinking about doing, and I'm going to give them a try with this. Like I said, my friend Josh and I work at a laser tag company, and I have an idea for a tool where it would be a multi-screen tool like this, where we can send live commands to the game, or we can monitor I think I mentioned this before. The XB radios have a nice tool in them where they'll scan the channels and they'll show you the relative strength and how busy the channel is. So the idea is if Josh goes out to a customer site, he could run this scan process and say, okay, we should probably put you on this channel because it's less busy than the other ones. That way you're not competing with other XB traffic.
Super. So any questions here for John? Well, we've got them. Should we have a contest, John?
I think so. That always inspires people.
Usually when we have contests, we get 1 or 2 entries.
Say, John, could you go back to where you're on the next encode, setting the string of date time, or the time to the parallax?
So you want it to, in the Nextion editor, you're saying? Something?
Yeah, in the Nextion editor. Yeah.
Okay. Which part?
Where you're sending the parse time to the P2.
Okay. So the that's on this page, and it's going. Oh, so it's after we've set it, because. So here's what happens when we go to the keypad page. If we press enter, we're going to send a value back. Since I made this a generic keypad page, it doesn't do any qualifying here. The only thing it does, it is restrained by how many characters you can have in this field. That's what that variable is. There's a global variable called max keys. So that needs to. That's the only thing it deals with, but. For example, I could put 999999999 and send it back, but that's not a valid time.
Right.
Let me turn my IDs back on so I can see that. Oh, so let me go back to here. So in this hotspot, that's where I'm hiding my code for to do the validation. So when this gets called, it's because either we called it manually from the propeller, or as I just talked about a moment ago, or in this case where we came back from the keypad and the return code was set to 1. So at that point, if return code is set to 1, then in fact, well, let me show you that. So if I'm here, if return code is 1, I'm going to make a copy of result. And then I'm going to do that click, which runs the press event of this object called HS, which is for hotspot set.
Right.
So when we go to the set clock, here's that click event. So here we go. Remember, I made a whole bunch of, I extended these out. These are all just general purpose global variables. And it just makes it easier because I don't have to deal with the .val thing. But here I want to use an internal local variable. So I've made raw time.val has the time that came from the keypad. This is a decimal value at this point. So by dividing by 100,000, I get the hours portion. So that's in sys0. Now, this remember, it looks like C, but it's really a scripting language. It's kind of inspired by C. And you can see there's no semicolons, and there's a lot of other things that don't exactly match C. But so in this case, this is running left to right. So the first thing so to get to the minutes, we take the modulus, that's here. So that gets rid of the hours and we divide by 1,000. So sys1 is our minutes. And again, we're repeating this process. Here's our seconds and here's our day. So I've extracted the 4 constituent parts out. Does that make sense how I did that?
Oh yeah, no, I wanted to do the print statement heading over to.
Oh, the print. Oh, sorry. Okay, so,
Yeah.
so this, it's here. You're.
Okay. Where? Okay, I see you doing your print S, and you got your clock equals and then 6.
Mm-hmm.
Where is X going out? Where's your string going out?
Well, so here is, so X is the time, the fixed.
Oh, wait a minute. It's right below it. String.text.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't see that. I was looking for X.
Oh,
And-
yeah. Yeah. No, you
Yeah, that's where I got
print the number
confused.
directly. You have to convert it to a string to send
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Now I get, that's my question. Now
Okay.
I'm confused.
Okay. So, and sorry, I was going to go into the full explanation. You just wanted
Yeah.
that. But yeah, you'll see that in a lot of cases. in some places, for example, if it's direct, we know the value here. So there's just those two lines.
Yeah.
But in this case, the time is in a variable. So we've got to do the conversion to a string and then do that as a separate line.
Okay. Yeah, that's when you're first showing this code, for some reason, that second print statement didn't click to what we were printing out. So now I've got it in.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't very clear with that. But yeah, so yeah, this is converting the time to a string, that decimal version of the time to a string. And then, in the end, we get clock equals and then 7 digits or up to 7 digits.
Yep.
Sent to the propeller. And here we, again, we send a carriage return so that we can see it on the terminal.
Cool, thank you.
You're welcome.
So John, what I think I'll do is collect up all the resources and then put this on a single page with as a quick bite with the videos linked in too, giving some step-by-step instructions.
And there is a thread in the forums called Getting Started with the Next Gen HMI. I'll continue to post code in there as I features. I do want to add in the save values to the EEPROM. And someone last week, who I don't think is on today, had asked about what what John and I had come up with for his big project that he's doing. In that particular case, we put all the next gen processing in its own cog. I saw that this project might now benefit from that because we're trying to run that main loop really fast. And now when we set the clock, there's a little bit of an interruption because we've got to do that processing and then send those strings. So that could slow things down a little bit, where that could all be happening in a background cog, which we've certainly got plenty of. And so I will keep that commitment, and I'll again, sometime after Christmas, I'll put that version up too. But we'll keep everything in that forum thread.
Great. So John, for contest, we'll just put one together and won't really have any rules because I think we'll get minimal entries. It's normally the case. And so if we see anybody having used all the material you've created, that'll be a positive thing.
Well, I'm gonna, maybe I'm being unfair to Carol, but Carol's done some really neat NASA stuff with the debug, screen in Propeller Tool. I'm hoping he does something NASA looking on the next.
I got a couple of pictures if you want to look at them.
Sure.
With some of the stuff. Okay, so here's the first one. Does anybody recognize what that is? Oh, let me.
I stopped sharing, so you can show them.
All right, let me do the sharing here. So do you see the screen?
Yes.
Do you recognize what that is?
I don't, but it looks cool.
Yeah, it does.
That's a keypad off the show, the Expanse. That's next to the hatches.
Nice.
Yeah. This is another one here that I'm working on. So if I move this out of the way.
Now, Carol, since I'm already in Hollywood, you have to tell people that to call me when they need prop help.
Gotcha.
Although that show's shot in Toronto or Montreal, so there's nobody here doing work for it.
So this is another one I'm working on right here. This is like a caution and warning type panel. And I'm designing it so you can wear it. So anyway, that's two of the things I'm working on.
Neat. Very cool.
Let me see if I can unshare now.
There's a red button somewhere. Yeah.
There it is. Okay, thank you.
You have your stuff hooked up? Kevin R?
Yeah.
I didn't get a chance to run your latest code, so maybe you could show it. Kevin added 3 more features to the original code that we did.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm getting the code right now.
Okay. So one of the things I had an exchange with Kevin that's important to remember, he was trying to control the features in one of it, the timing, one of the new features, and he added a weight MS into, the code section, where the features, but we don't want to do that in this case. Now, what I think was going on is that he wasn't clearing the dirty flag, and so it was constantly running that, so he'd inserted delay. Once we cleared the dirty flag, then the timing ran naturally. So that keeps things very responsive. The whole goal, as I see it, for this style of programming, where we're doing the state machine program, is we don't want any artificial delays where we're just standing still. We're constantly looping around. When it's time to do something, we do it. It's how, old school multitasking programs worked in the past, so that it looked like you're doing multiple things at once. You're actually just, round robin processing so many things so quickly, like they were happening at the same time.
It's almost ready.
Oh, it's downloading now. Okay, good. Yeah, I found Ken, heard Ken mention, downloading with a prop plug. You can do that. I've thankfully on my computer, I do have an SD card, so I've got an SD adapter, and I'm able to pop things in and out without having to disconnect. But either way works fine.
I don't know if it's going to show very well on video.
You can kind of see it. You see, so Kevin added swipe, fire, and magic. You can see those are 3 new entries that he added to the screen. And are the lights hooked up?
Yeah, I just got to get it going.
All right, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
That's magic. It's a little bit bright for the video, but you can see it going there. And fire. And swipe uses the color 1 and color 2.
Yeah, and magic, is that the one where you're using the Q sign function?
Yes.
Yeah, so on magic, I did run an earlier version of that. So it creates an undulating color pattern using the Q sign function to create a wave of color transitions. So anyway, hopefully those of you that have some time off over the holidays will have the opportunity to play with this and do some fun things.
Thanks again, John, for all of your hard work here and encapsulating all the summer coding adventure into this for us. And leaving
Well, I
behind
appreciate
things we can work
everybody's
with.
I appreciate everybody's patience. I know this was a little bit heavy in a few moments, but I think getting there, hopefully people will see that it's not too difficult to use. The framework we have, I think, is fairly solid. But listen, I would love for somebody to come and say, hey, here's an even better way to do it. Because it's a fun display. I really do like them.
Well, it's pretty neat. When you put this code out, we'll be using it 15 years from now.
Well, hopefully we'll have really interesting displays by then.
And Propeller Tool will still be in Delphi.
Yeah. For Christmas, you ought to buy your brother a compiler. I think it's only about $1,500.
You wouldn't use it. I don't manage him. Well, thanks, John. And we can talk about anything else of interest to people now. And I'll stop the recording as well.
Yeah, this is Mike Green. I've